This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening to everyone who has joined this webinar from India, and good morning to members from North Carolina chapter in the US. A very warm welcome to our guest speaker, Mr. Prakash, who has accepted to present this webinar. Just a few quick announcements before we start the session. Please can I request everyone other than the speaker to be on mute throughout the session. One PDU will be provided to all attendees of this session. I will share a link to a feedback form for this session on the chat window later during this webinar. Please fill and submit the form so that your PDU can be processed. It makes it easier if you do that. If you have any questions for Mr. Prakash, please post them on the chat window during the session, and we can cover a few of them with him at the end of this webinar. Right, that out of the way, how are you all coping with this self-isolation? Has everyone settled into this new system of working from home? Are you finding it a challenge like I do to find a quiet spot in the house for the video conferences? How about parents with kids at home? How are you spending time with them? I mean, I was playing Monopoly, Lego, cards last week with my family, and it is now Carom and chess this week. Occasionally some Frisbee also outside. But has anyone tried a hand at the kitchen, maybe polishing off some new dishes? How is everyone enjoying the sweeping and mopping of the floors? Anything interesting, please mention in the chat window. Let's share and just let us lift our spirits up during this time. Right, so the topic for today's session is creating a compelling future through balanced decision making. And this is going to be presented by Mr. Prakash. Mr. Prakash is the CEO and co-founder of Sea Change Consulting. He has over 3 decades of management and leadership experience in over 40 plus vertical domains. He is the author of books You Too Can Sell, which he was mentioning earlier, and You Too Can Be Rich. His recent books include Future Proof Your Business, which is again just behind where he's sitting, you can see on the shelf, and also Life Skills 101. He has released a book in Tamil called Varkai Tirumaigal 101 and is currently working on a book titled Spiritual CEO. We wish him best of luck for his with his upcoming book. His other avatars include turnaround consultant, nation builder, movie consultant, mental coach, and meditator. He has conceptualized, fine-tuned, and launched 2 unique services in India, both being the first of its kind. Those are movie appraisal system, which is a scientific and proven way to predict success of any movie, like hit or miss. And then pillars of mental mastery, which is a unique mental conditioning program for sports persons and corporate executives. If that wasn't enough, he's made several media appearances on JRTV programs on self-development. You can follow Mr. Prakash on seechangeworld.com and watches hundreds of inspirational videos on YouTube channel See Change Online. So I will post all these links on the site channel, so on the chat window. So please do look up when you get time. So without further ado, it is over to you, Mr. Prakash.
Yeah, let me start with what is now becoming a worldwide phenomena, social distancing. Namaste.
Namaste.
Something that India has now given to the world, like what they're giving so many things. I just wanted to start something on a lighter note. I hope you don't mind a joke if I start with. There were a set of cannibals, man-eaters who were caught in one of the forests. And instead of taking them to the law, the people felt that they should be given a chance to change and transform. And they were put through a lot of work and knowledge transformation and all that. And finally, they got a job in a IT company. And being the cannibal they couldn't get over with the habit of eating people. And as it was happening, and one of the days, one of the general managers or the VP came and spoke. There were about 3 of them, with one cannibal being the main person, the other 2 being his lieutenants. He came and spoke to that person and said, what are you people doing? You just ate the housekeeper yesterday. So all of them kept silent, denying that they didn't eat. After that, VP went. He knew the background of the cannibals, and the superior was speaking to the two other people who ate the housekeeper, and one person sheepishly raised his hand and said, "I did." You should be really stupid. See, last week we ate about 7 project management professionals. Nobody noticed. Why did you ever have to touch a housekeeper? If you understood the joke, I mean, no offense meant. Okay, today we are getting into a topic which is a very, very interesting one. What I call as how do we create a compelling future through a balanced decision-making process. Each of the word here that you see is a chapter by itself. Hold on. Yeah. Let's move on to the first question that I have. I am going to make it a little bit of interactive. You don't need to respond, but if you have a paper and a pen, or if you have a word pad in front of you open, I want you to type out something as a response to this first question that I'm putting up to you. I would have the session going on maybe for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending upon how it goes, and then we'll throw it open for question answers. This one is more interactive, but I want you just to take a paper and pen and write, what would you define leadership to be in your view? Of course, if you Google, you'll find about 3,000 plus definition for this. Just take a minute. Just write down what do you feel is the definition for leadership as you see it. Or if you're not one of the people who like to write, just visualize what the definition is.
Some responses are coming through in the chat window, so I'll just shout them. Lead by example, role model.
Okay.
Living what you preach.
Okay. Walk the talk.
Who takes right decision at times of difficulty.
Okay.
Ability to inspire, leading the way. Oh, it's moving faster than I can read. Putting in self first.
Okay.
Getting things done, motivate people, impacting people's lives, mentoring. Yeah. Trust, serve, high vision.
Wonderful.
Influence. Yep.
Still flowing?
It is, yeah. Mastering in functional and management traits, taking challenge.
Okay.
Cheerfully, yeah. Influence without authority. Yeah, and it's scrolling pretty fast.
Okay, very good. Each one of the definitions that you said would surely fit into the what a leader is. Let me just share one simple definition that I would like to sort of expand further, and the entire session is going to be based on this specific definition that you see on the screen. Don't worry about writing down. I'll share the PPT with Mr. Vijay, and it will reach you after the session is over. The one who takes balanced decisions and enables seamless execution. Apparently very simple definition. If you really look at what you are today, we are on, say, I think the 12th of April in this part of the world, 2020. Imagine a date 3 years behind, say 12th of April 2017, where you were. Say on that day you had to take a decision. With or without your knowledge, you came to a yoke. Yoke is typically one of the metaphor that we use in communicating about decision-making process. A yoke is typically like a fork where you stand and you have several choices that, and you're narrowed down to just say 2 choices. And within these 2 choices, you have to move either to choice 1 or to choice 2. Choice 1 takes you 45 degrees up on the right, and choice 2, which is 45 degrees to the left up. Assuming that you took a decision on the tree, and then after that, every week, every month, every year, you had kept on, say, taking decisions, and you have become what you are today. Whether you know it or not, it was based on the decision that you took on that day on in 2017 on 12th of April. I'm just giving a date just like that for you to get the concept in. If you really had taken the other road, the left road, where you would have gone? That's a question I wanted to ponder and think. It is said that an executive, typically in an organization, can someone mute that child's mic, please? It's done, Mr. Vijay? Okay. Let's assuming that if you're looking at the life of a corporate executive, in a typical day, based on my experience and the work that I have done, with or without your knowledge, you are taking at least 8 to 10 key decisions in a day. That's about an average of one decision per hour. And there are in between lots and lots and lots of small decisions that we take, right from having a cup of coffee, when to have, how many sugar cubes to put sugar cubes or not, to go for alternate to sugar. There are several decisions that we keep on taking, and many a time these decisions are literally taken on the go. If you really look at it, very rarely have I ever seen decisions being made, except for very critical decisions, specifically when it comes to large stakes like merger and acquisitions, hiring of a top level executive, and things like that. Say, let's look at a very funny situation. I'm sure that considering the age group in this participants, I'm sure that all of you should be married, I guess, right? How did you decide your spouse? Just think, you don't need to answer. What are the parameters? Was it a scientific balanced decision, or was it a decision which, in many of our cases, in Tamil we call it as falling a trap for the suji and bhaji. I mean, they give you a little bit of kesari and a bhaji for which you go there to see the girl, and finally you'll end up getting married because someone said so, and somebody put pressure, your neighbor said so, or you didn't have a choice, or that's how your family behaved. I remember how my elder brother got married. When he went, he had told way ahead, even before, that whether he likes the girl or not, this is the girl I'll get married to. So I was younger. I continue to be younger by 10 years to him. So I asked him, why did you do that? So that's how all the family members in our family have done. I don't know whether he had a good married life or not. It's up to him. But if you really look at how a decision is made, are we making decisions knowing that each of the decision is a fork which is taking us further and further in a direction? Do we know the direction in the first place? Or are we jumping from the tip of a cliff and then hoping that the parachute that might be there, might not be there, will open in the right time? Just for you to think and ponder whether decision making is something that, as leaders, I say that everyone in the world is a leader. Very simple. Why? Because even a kid takes a decision whether to go to school or not, whether to study for this specific exam or not, whether to score a specific set of marks that my parents want or not. Decisions are being made and decisions are being executed. Many times we spend a lot of time on execution. We worry a lot about what I call as lag indicators. Lag indicators in balanced scorecard or performance management system, as you might know, are indicators which are results oriented, number oriented. At the end of it, what am I going to achieve? For example, what is going to be my turnover for financial year 2021? At the end, I know whether I achieved or not. That's a lag indicator. And a lag indicator, by definition, is it lags behind. There's no point in only looking at a lag indicator. What works for many of us are what I call as a lead indicator. A lead indicator or a series of inputs that I have to keep on giving for me to reach the lag indicator which I have set for myself. One of the primary lead indicator that I have for leaders, either by designation or otherwise, is their ability to continuously decide, because in spite of deciding the direction of a financial turnover, top line, bottom line, or whatever, many times on the course, we have to continuously do a lot of course corrections, which are nothing but series of decisions being rectified or changed or modified. Do we have a pattern? Do we have a method to our madness? Do we have a balanced approach to how we decide? Unless we know, as I always say, that speed or destination, which matters most. Many times, if you really see, people jump for speed, though logically they say that decision is more important. We give lip service to decision making, and hence what happens in many of the situations, even the current crisis that is going on in the world. If you look at many of the decisions that are being taken, they are more like knee-jerk reactions or short-term decisions which are based on a specific criteria. On one hand, somebody is saying that you can't have a lockdown for so long because it affects economy. On other hand, people are saying that people are more important. Economy is not that important. Economy can always come as long as the people are there. But in between these both, do we have more logical choices? Do we have more parameters that we have available in front of us for us to take a balanced decision? This is a question for each leader to ponder over. I always say that the 10/90 maxim that I apply for leadership, 10% is all about the decisions and the strategies that you take to ensure that the decisions that you take are executed well. 90% of what you do is finally the execution. Actually, if you look at the invertendo as I call, the 10% of what you have to do, the decision and the strategy at a top level, actually might be consuming 90% of your time. If I were to build a house, I would rather worry about getting my drawing and the architectural plan in place, even if it has to take 2 or 3 months. Instead of I worry about moving to execution, thinking that I need to start the house because I have committed that by next month or by a specific date, I have to do the muhurt of getting into the house, I would be compromising on the direction and moving into the execution mode. If I made sense till now, let me move to the next slide for you to think again on another parameter that I want to introduce in this equation before we move further. Please think and define for yourself what is management. Whatever comes to your mind, just let it scroll. Mr. Vijay can read it for me. I have parked already what is decision making and leadership to do with that. I'm moving to another segment. I'll interview all this as we go along and connect the dots for you. Now let's take this specific definition, define what is management as you see it.
It's overseeing the flow, art
Okay.
of getting things done.
Okay. I did hear art of getting things done even for leadership. So leadership and management maybe.
Very interlinked, I suppose. Managing human skills to achieve results, getting
Okay.
things in a controlled way, managing the situation and stick to goal, plan,
Okay.
do, check, act.
Okay.
Someone's recently done a PMP exam, I think.
Yeah, PDCA.
Controlled execution, defined way of doing things in an organized way, managing people to get work done towards a specific objective, align things, people towards goal, managing the things to get the things done. Interesting. Planning, executing, controlling, managing the execution. Management is getting things right. Leadership is doing things right. Sorry, doing the right things. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, yeah, that was me. My bad.
The old Stephen Covey quote.
Yes.
Yeah.
Letting it go, dealing with things, strategic objective execution, setting up the goals and achieving them, inclination of thoughts to common goal, remove blocks for smooth execution, streamline the work to get desired results, applying the economic principles in the right time and make the right decisions at the right decisions. Okay, interesting. Management is about doing right things at the right time.
Okay.
There's a few more there. Devise
Okay.
strategies and have the best team to execute, providing direction on par with portfolio stroke business development, organization and coordination of the activities of a business in order to achieve defined objectives, and then better understanding. Leadership is having vision. Okay, I think someone's typing in for the earlier question. Fine. Yeah.
I will just post one small definition. I want you to have a look. You can read it for yourself. It finally comes down to two things which are also part of leadership in a way: helping the organization and teams to make balanced, democratic decision making. It's a huge word which I will dive deep. The moment I say democratic, there will be a lot of thoughts that will be running in your head. In all probability, what I intend saying might be different from what is understood, but it's okay. The second is to ensure that whatever you decide is executed in military style. It is always direction first and execution next. If you really look at many of the challenges that we face as leaders, you find the opposite being true in many of the organizations I have consulted and worked with. I work with MSMEs, SMEs, mid-cap and large corporates, and quite a few people. We help them turn around, and we do a lot of CEO coaching. You find predominantly the pyramid model of organization that is prevalent world over. You'll find that finally at the top of the pyramid, there is one or two people who are sitting who call all the shots, which typically means as organizations, we are accustomed to an autocratic or a military style decision making. If it is Hitler, only Hitler will take the decision. If it's Mussolini, Mussolini takes the decision. Everybody else will have to fall in line. It might work for a command and control situation like an army. Even there nowadays, it's proven that today I was reading an interesting article that the Indian political system is changing so fast in the last 2 weeks. It's a true central federal coexistence coming into play is what one of the editorial was in today's section of the press. It's either Hindu or Times of India, one of them I was reading in the morning. But you find actually, in spite of leaders claiming to give a lot of room and space for their team players, at best, the team players act as people who are, sorry to use the word, like courier people. They just give certain information to the management or what we call the CEOs or the managing director of the organization, however large, however small they are. Last year, I was working with a 10,000 crore group, North India, and I surprisingly found that even a simple decision like buying anything about 10,000 rupees worth of capital equipment, the managing director has to personally sign off. And in one of the toilets, the lights were not on. And when I went on one of my consulting work, I was asking why the lights are not on. He said, Saab, we have to buy this lights and it's pending with the MD. I said, why he hasn't signed? He's out of town for 3 days. He'll come back after he signs only we can buy. Just imagine how much centralization, autocratic decision making is available or made as a default standard in many of the organizations. Actually, when I work with the factory level people, I always find that the people who are the last mile connectivity, the people who are actually doing the work, seem to know more about the work than actually the people who are right up the top. No offense meant to the graduations and the B school certificates that we all carry. But finally, the person who is there, who is doing it, seems to know much more. When I talk about a democratic decision making, it is just not about voting rights. The process that I'm sharing here is much, much larger and more encompassing than what we do. We have actually helped many of the organizations to implement the process of democratic decision making, which I'll explain what it is as we go along. And let me give you a parallel example. Let's say that you make a decision and then people start executing. And then at the point of execution, they say that the decision that has been taken by the superior, the boss, the CEO, whoever is not correct, and they throw the spanner in the works and say that we won't do the work. What would happen? We speak about two factors here. One, I call it as responsibility. The second I call as accountability. There are several definitions that all of you would have for each one of them. Let me give one definition that might make a lot of interesting points for you to think about. Responsibility is what I call as input based. What I bring to the table before I actually move into the execution mode. Responsibility per se would include the decisions I make, the power and authority that has to be given for people to make the right choices, the resources like time, money, manpower, infrastructure, knowledge, whatever that I need to bring to the table before I actually move into the execution stage. Accountability is about the output. When people say they are responsible, what I would understand or infer is that that person has moved through a process of ensuring that everything that is to be done properly has been done with the complete support of all the people who are part of the final execution or decision making process. Which means that before I move into an execution, like the 1090 model that I said about, enough time has been spent with all the core stakeholders who know about the target that we want to achieve or the problem that we want to solve, and are able to bring some kind of input to the table, which would be one of the missing building blocks when I finally have a building which is collapsing. I'll find that the fulcrum was missing, which was available with someone, but I didn't take it because I didn't want to listen to him. When I say I'm a responsible leader, actually it means that every possible input that needs to be brought to the table for me to make the perfect decision as a leader, biting my ego, understanding the need to empathetically listen, I have gone through the process. And between responsibility and accountability, in between is what we call as the execution. When the execution happens based on responsible inputs, which triggers the execution, the output in more or less chances will become more predictable. The idea of leadership is to move from a probabilistic model to a deterministic model. When Mr. Vijay introduced me, he was speaking about movie consulting. One of the things that we do in movie consulting is exactly the same. Ensure that all the probabilities of failures are minimized or removed as far as possible. And whatever determines the success, the inputs to make that deterministic, we give more and more focus to that. For example, if you have to decide on a script today, I would rather ensure that the script is successful instead of one person who claims to have an industry experience who says that I know whether the script will be successful or not. Even the so-called superstars of South and North are given failures, which means they also can give failure movies. So if responsibility is all about making things deterministic, the probability of the output not meeting your target gets reduced, and the output or me being accountable for the output also becomes deterministic. So in a way, democratic decision making is about making deterministic inputs to ensure that output becomes more deterministic. When this happens, the execution phase, which is in between, can go like clockwork, which is what I call as military style. The person who has to shoot a bullet has to think, should I shoot a bullet or not? Maybe my general, major general made a wrong decision. He would have been shot by the time already. So if management has to be made clear, it's all about two things: your ability to enable democratic decision making and your ability to seamlessly execute things in military style. If these 2 points make sense to you, you have understood the foundation of management principles. Let me move to the next question for you to think a little bit. I was speaking about how you chose your spouse, or how you chose the meal that you wanted to have tonight, or what kind of dress you wanted to wear today. Whether it's a minor decision or a very big decision that you made in life, the fundamental building blocks being more or less the same. Please think and put it in the chat box. How do you make your decisions right now? Feel free, whatever it is, right, wrong, doesn't matter. Right or wrong is in the thinking, as Shakespeare would say. How do you make decisions right now? Just put it in the...
By instinct, based on past experiences,
Okay.
weigh the odds of success, seeing others, based on available information, SWOT analysis, based on gains, impact analysis, data, experience, lessons learned, based on pros and cons, collaborate, gut feeling, impulse, weighted score. Oh, that's impressive. Somebody can do a weighted score. Think of all possibilities and arrive at the most optimistic one. Consulting Oh, sorry, that went too quick. My wife makes the best decisions. Well, that's the best answer, I think. Yeah.
I think the whole lockdown has given him some sense.
Need of the moment, based on priority, my priority, multi-criteria analysis, intuitive decisions of mine, based on importance, all practical, I think. All responses are very practical here. Come up with multiple options and choose the best one by considering all stakeholders impacted, scenario based.
Wonderful. Are we done? Something more
Just a couple of more, just filtering in. Decision tree method.
Okay.
First, decide on what you want, and then we would call it success. Logical way. Yeah, stop.
Okay, if you can just take a paper or put it there. You already done, many of you have done, I think. Is this the only model that you follow, or do you really follow this model, or is it a spur of the moment reaction to the question that I posed here? Just think about it before I throw the next question to you. Okay, let's assume that whatever you have said is like a huge jigsaw puzzle, and you have one portion of the puzzle with you in hand. You still have several puzzles that have to come together before the puzzle can be falling in place and seem to have been solved. How do you think actually you should be making decisions? Setting aside how you are currently taking decisions, going forward, based on whatever we have already shared in the last 35 to 40 minutes, how do you think you should be making decisions going forward? Let's assume that whatever you have said till now, we move into the trash can, into the recycle bin. I wanted to start with a fresh slate and write. Okay, whatever I've said right now, I want to unlearn, leave it out. How should I be making decisions from now on? Please put it in the chat box.
Understand the problem, ensure others impacted are part of the decision making, analyzing the current situation. There's a slightly longer response here. Making decisions, step one, create a constructive environment. Decisions can become complex when they involve or affect other people. Step two, investigate situation in detail. Step three, generate good alternatives. And step four, explore your options.
Okay.
Then I've got, with the end goal in mind, consult team expert based on lessons learned, informed and collective thinking. Create situations where decision making is not needed anymore.
That's interesting.
If you can't change the decision, you can change the situation, I suppose. With a lot of thought process based on failures, brainstorm with the team, state the problem, define how good. Sorry, yeah, maybe some typos there. I'll skip that response. Make a decision keeping the risk element intact.
Okay.
Decision should solve the required purpose. Take the decisions which is fit for all. Induct all the people involved and decide based on facts and figures.
Okay. Done?
Yep.
Okay. Let me ask you, or rather share a few interesting points before we move on to what could be a good decision-making model for us to follow. Based on my experience, I have seen that there are several decision-making blocks that each of the leader is born with. It's part of the DNA. We don't have a choice. We are not perfect, well-chiseled. We don't have 8-packs or 6-packs when it comes to decision-making. We do have family packs, which are well-blown. And some of the blocks that we have that you can see here, which I have found out over several years of experience working with leaders. Emotional imbalance. For example, let me expand a bit on this because it might not completely appeal to your logic, though emotions need not. If I have to be asked to take a decision in the morning at 8:30 when I am at home, if I'm being asked to take a decision at 11 o'clock in the office when there is high pressure meeting going on, if I'm going to be asked to take a meeting or a decision when my lunch has been delayed, when I just am about to have lunch, I'm hungry and somebody's asking me to take a decision. When it's about 4 o'clock in the evening, I've already gone through the peak of the day and I'm just looking at tapering down before I leave, and then my boss calls and puts me through a meeting, high stress. And at the end of the meeting, I have to take a decision which will decide the future of my team. And when I come home in the evening and I'm already completely, sort of out of my moods, and I've already committed to my daughter or my son to take them out for a movie, not during lockdown period though. And when I'm entering the home, my mind is already full, and then they come and say, Daddy, we want to go for a movie. In all this situation, there is one common thread which actually forces you to decide, which is nothing but your emotions. If I were an ideal leader in any of these situations, whether at 8:30 in the morning, 11 at office workplace, or at the time of a delayed lunch, or when at 4 o'clock when my boss called for a meeting, or when I rushed home or when it was quite late when my children wanted to go out for a movie. If I were an ideal balanced leader, I wouldn't let my emotions hold sway in how I decide. In many of the leadership forums I have addressed and spoken and I've worked, one of the common complaints or inputs or feedbacks given by subordinates or team members, they say that if I want to decide something to be done in my favor, I know exactly when to catch my boss when he will say yes. Which means there are times when you actually go, the boss is going to say a no for the same situation. Is it a logical stuff? For the same situation, whether my staff or my team member comes to me, whether I'm in a good mood or in a bad mood, should my decision change? If the answer is a big resounding yes, which is what it is world over, which means I am taking a emotionally imbalanced decision. This is one of the first biggest blocks that many of the leaders, including me, including many of you, might be having. When I'm in a mood swing, and if you had looked at Johari window principles, what I am, which I think I know, others may be thinking differently, and I'm not even aware. And they know exactly when not to enter my room because my mood is bad. They know when to enter my room because my mood is good. That is the first biggest block that you're going to face as a leader, which stops you from making balanced decisions, your emotional imbalances. Let me move to the second, cognitive bias. Each one of us, based on one of the chat box response Mr. Vijay read out, was based on my past experience. Past experiences normally are one of the biggest cognitive bias that all of us have. The biggest challenges in any given situation, my so-called rational mind rushes me through the process of having to take a decision based on my current cognitive ability. And my current cognitive ability is severely restrained because of several factors, like the educational background I have, the educational background I didn't have, the family background in which I have been brought up, the kind of situations I've faced as a child, as an adolescent, as a teenager, as a growing executive. All this has gone into my head, and with or without my knowledge, at the time of having to take a decision, all these so-called experience boxes, as we call, come in and acts as a bias, which means at any point of time, instead of looking at the prism of decision making from a balanced perspective, I look at it from the perspective of what my current cognitive biases are. This is the second biggest block not necessarily in that order. For each one of us, the order might change. The third, many of us think that we are extremely good in logical thinking. Specifically those in the PMP field, you all would know the famous quote of Walter Deming. I trust in God, others bring data. But because of the way in which the emotional imbalance and the cognitive bias mix, the cocktail as we call works, the logical thinking normally takes a back seat. Mainly because, in my experience, I wrote an article 3 months ago, which you can find out in my blog spot. We all have about 50 to 100 people who influence what we are and what we think at any point of time in our life. If you tell me about 5 to 10 people who are close to you, in about 3 to 4 hours time, putting them through certain tests, psychometric and otherwise, I can tell you what kind of decisions you will be taking. Because many times the decisions that we think we are taking are to a great extent influenced by the so-called logic that is given to us by the people who are very close to us. And one of the biggest, as rightly pointed out by one of our friend in the chat box, my wife decides for me, which actually is bang on target. I mean, to a great extent, this is true for many of us, specifically in a work from home situation. Your logic is not flawed. Your logic is influenced. People will keep influencing you with or without your knowledge. Because of the basic insecurity that we all have interwoven in the fabric of our being, we tend to rely on a few people and ask them inputs on how to take a decision. And the so-called logic that they put on us becomes the barrier through which I look at. It's like looking at sunlight with a tinted glass. Sunlight being what it is, I'll still see the color as my color of the glass is. The same way your logical thinking to a great extent is influenced by the people who are around you. Hence, to a great extent, the third block that we all have, poor logical thinking, is to a great extent foregone conclusion. I will also give you one interesting anecdote here, which I have not put here in the slide. Many of the CEOs I meet, many of the CEOs I interview for top companies, when I ask them which is your biggest strength, they literally snap their finger and say that I can take decisions like this. In fact, these are the people first I straightaway discount from the shortlist of potential candidates. Because when someone say they take decisions like this, snap of a finger, actually what are they saying? They are not taking intuitive decisions. They are taking impulsive decisions. As many of the people in marketing will understand, billions and billions of dollars are being spent today on making people to buy impulsively. Because when you are making impulsive decisions, your logical mind is taking a backseat. So decision making is not about hurrying into options. For example, when India launched the counter-offensive in one of the border attacks in the last few months ago, they did not rush in the next day after the attack. They took about 10 days to weigh down all the options, made precision-based calculations, looked at the external affairs impact globally, looked at various options. Whether the decision to do what they did was right or wrong is still out for debate. But when they took a decision, they jumped? No. They took about 8 to 10 days before they decided to launch that early morning strike. Likewise, when you are moving to a decision, there is absolutely no hurry that we need to. The moment you are feeling hurried in decision, the best thing to do is pause, do not sign off on the paper. The fourth block, which many of the project management professionals at least will not be making that decision, is not looking at data. Here, data again, if you look at many of the decision-making models, data can be, I would say, not complete. Data can be influenced. Let me put it this way. In one of the projects that we are working about 5 years ago, there was a decision that the CEO had to take on a daily basis at the end of the day. and it was based on the data that was flowing to him. He was taking decisions, and continuously they were finding that the decisions were getting results which are not acceptable. It was actually proving to be counterproductive. When they went down and had a look, we rather did a little bit of an investigation, and then we found out that the data that was coming to them was actually being window dressed. Many of us know what window dressing is. There's a famous quotation from one of the management books I like the most. The CEO went and asked the accountant, what is the tax that you're going to pay for this year? The accountant very simply asked him, sir, what do you want it to be? That's what data many times is. When people know that data is the only model through which I look at a decision, they know how to fudge or present data back to me. Hence, sometimes not looking at data here is not looking at the data the way in which it has to be looked is a critical block that we all have. These are 4 major blocks, plus there are several more that each one of us have. Not being technically competent, not having the right tools on hand, being rushed, and blah, blah, whatever. If this is point on this slide is taken, if you have any questions, I'll take it towards the end. I'll move you to the next critical slide where I intend sharing 2 decision-making models which I share with many of the leaders. There are about 8 models that I normally propagate. But the purpose behind having a model for a balanced decision making is you and your entire team know that how you take a decision is predictable. Because whether the decision making model that you follow is completely perfect or not, at least people should know that when I go to my CEO or my immediate supervisor, immediate superior, my vice president or whatever, I know that this is the way in which you look at a decision. And hence, I can also rationally start thinking the way in which my boss would think so that we are all on the same. So developing one specific model or 1 or 2 models, you can have multiple models. For situation A or a type of situations, you can tell your team, this is the model I will follow. For another set of situations, this is the kind of model I will follow. When you make that very clear and communicate it across the organization or your team, however small, however big they are, what happens is your decisions become predictable and they move towards becoming a balanced decision. Let's look at the first model that I wanted to share with you, what I call as a LIE model. LIE here is an acronym. Here it's a combination of, before I move to the model, let's look at, I'm sure all of you would know how an equilateral triangle looks like. The sides are of the same angle and the distances are the same. And what is inside what you call as the area that can keep expanding, which means as the equilateral triangle expands, all sides and angles being the same all the time, the area of success, the area of certainty of my decision becomes better and my outputs become more and more predictable and more, I would say, better and better with better impact as we go along. When I look at this model, the fundamental, the prism on top, if you take L here stands for logic. Whatever be the logical model that you want to follow, whether it is a force field analysis, whether it's a SWOT model, whether it's a 6 thinking hats that you want to follow, make it very clear to the team. This is the model of logic through which we will derive our decisions. This logic can happen over a period of 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, whatever time it takes. When you have exhausted all the options and then you have on hand an apparent decision or 1 or 2 decisions, you are now at the yoke for you to take a decision. Do I take choice 1? Do I take choice 2? This is where you move into what I call as intuition. Michel Dell was the famous architect of what we see in worldwide today, the web-based selling to start with. In one of his books, he had mentioned very clearly, there are times that his teams will give him a decision, but he'll wait for that call. Sometimes it can even go to 1, 2, 3 months before something from inside him, the intuition, what we call the inner voice, it comes and says, This is the choice you have to take. Don't be in a rush. In fact, many times when you silence is the time when then the intuition speaks. Of course, one of the tools that I propagate to people to listen to intuition is to learn to meditate. Whatever form of meditation suits you the best. When you calm the mind and the external noises are cut off, your prejudices are cut off, there is something that tells you from inside this is the choice you have to make. Now I have gone to the second step, which is I. This is the sequence in which I take this model through. Logically, am I extremely clear? Have I narrowed down to one or two choices? Does my intuition say that choice 1 is good, choice 2 is good? And then I move to the third one. Unfortunately, many of the leaders start with the last block of this model, which is emotion. The last block, emotion, is more like, do I feel good about the decision? Does my team feel good about the decision? Emotionally, do I feel energetic? Do I feel charged up in doing this? If these three together form the perfect three axis points of the equilateral triangle, you have a balanced decision making on your hand. Model number 1. If you have any questions, write it down. I'll answer it later to this model. Model number 2, which is more a deeper model, which is something that I would say that one of my top preferred choice when it comes to decision making. Before I dwell into what it is, what I call it the DGCS model, you will find on the slide what each one stands for. If you look at how you take decisions, scientific research has proven in the last 40 years in many of the top Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, they do use this model as part of the decision-making process. Each of the leader has a way of looking at how they decide. To give you an analogy, let me say that I like sweets, which I do. In front of me, there are, say, 4 sweets kept. Even though I would love to eat all the 4 sweets, my hand would still go towards one specific sweet I like the most. I may go to the other 3 later. Not that I don't like the other sweets lesser, but I like this the most. Likewise, in any decision-making situation, science, management science, leadership science has proven. We have even tools to prove, which we can easily sense in less than 30 minutes of an online tool and find out what your decision-making leadership profile is. You will approach a decision-making in one of the 4 parameters that a leader would take a decision on. And imagine if you are a leader, if you have to take balanced decisions, if your focus is on any one of the 4 acronym letters that you see, D or G or C or S, be rest assured that the decision that you take in all probabilities will be not a balanced one. The trajectory will be different from what you wanted it to be, and the decision which has to take you towards the direction that you want to go, in all probability will go in a completely different way. Not necessarily a failure, but you might choose a path which is different, which you did not deliberately move into. Like the famous book like Accidental Prime Minister, your decisions will be accidental. Something will happen because life anyway is all about somebody executing something. Something will come out, but there is not a deterministic way of making decision. Let me now move into what these 4 suites are. When I speak about the 4 suites, there are 4 major traits every leader is normally born with, and one of them is the most prominent one. And in any decision making situation, they take this as their point of view, and based on that they take decisions. Let me now go into the model of DGCS. When you look at the word delivering, D for delivering, these are the leaders for whom results and results alone matter. For them, the output, the production has to happen today. The project has to be completed in 1 week's time, come what may. By the choice of words, in fact, I can easily figure out a person's leadership decision-making trait. No harm. Whether you are following in any one of the decision making style, it is not a mistake. The question is, can you improve upon it? For example, let me come back to this D for delivering. Whenever I am delivering, whenever I am forced to deliver, whenever as a leader, my focus is only on achieving results, I will compromise on the other three. Let me park D here and then move to the other three, so that when I combine the four, you will get a understanding of how the four have to interoperate together. When I look at the second letter, which is G, or governing, governing is all about taking decisions based on compliance. Imagine a referee in a match. He is not worried about whether someone scores a goal or not, whether the match ends in a tie, whether somebody hits a sixer, whether somebody hits a four, or whether it's a football game or cricket game or whatever. His job is to ensure that everything that has to happen based on compliance. People who will not compromise on anything but what they say, dot the I's and cross the T's. They'll always be on the right side of the law. Whatever they have to do must comply with ethics, must comply with standards, must comply with norms, must comply with earlier decisions that have been taken. Let's look at the third model, C, or creating. These are the people who are, in their own way, visionaries. They're always thinking about a bigger future, whether it's 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, 3 years down the line. They see the grand picture. They see bigger things. They are the change agents or the change makers. They're always looking at something new. They're always looking at a new project. They're always looking at a new way of solving the problem. They're always looking at a new technology. They're always looking at a new platform. They're always looking at a new solution. Let's look at the last style of how people decide. S, or synthesizing. These are people, leaders who are people oriented. Their focus is primarily on maintaining the harmony within the team. They are more worried about the impact of the decisions on the people around them. Will my family be upset about the decision I'm making? Will my boss be upset? Will my subordinates be happy with the decision I am taking? Will there be enough motivation for them to work? Anything that they think and decide, they'll be thinking from people perspective. If you look at each of these perspectives, each one is right in its own way. But imagine if you have a D leader who is taking decisions, what is likely to happen to the organization? In all probability, for the sake of productivity, for the sake of pushing for results, he wouldn't mind compromising on quality. He will say that I don't care what you do. By today evening, 5 o'clock, this has to be dispatched. Sir, there is a problem with the quality challenge. Come on here, pack up and said, let's see later. He's taking a decision. What is he taking? He's taking a decision for production. As far as he is concerned, he is answerable for the EPS, earnings per share. He's answerable to the board. He has to dispatch all that. He is not worried about complaints. He is not worried about quality norms. Right or wrong, doesn't matter. He has to achieve results. The go-getters, as we say. Let's look at a leader who is looking at taking decisions from the perspective of governing. He will say that doesn't matter whether people are happy or not. Even come what may, a lockdown, everyone has to punch in at 9 o'clock sharp in the morning. Otherwise, your day's salary is cut. At sharp 11 o'clock, tea will be served. The tea break will be only for 5 minutes. If you come after that, so and so action will be taken. I do not want any dispatches happening unless we meet quality norms to this standard. Imagine at each level, the gates are being narrowed. The same situation you have in lockdown period, right? The government tells you specifically stay home. But people who are go-getters have to go out and get the, say at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, your spouse tells you go and get vegetables. You know that the lockdown starts at 2. Up to 2, you could have gone for shopping. And you are not a G person. You are a person who takes a D. What will you do? You will still find a way to go to that shop, even if the shop is closed, find a way to get the material and come back, because you are a go-getter. You have to do it. And compliance is not a big issue for you. That's government's problem, not my problem. Let's look at a leader who is C-oriented, who is continually looking at creating a vision, who is continually looking at the future. These are people who are, for you to get an understanding, they're continuously creating new fires and going on, not knowing what the earlier fire is doing. For example, as a CEO, I come into the room. I yesterday dropped in an idea to the project team to go ahead and look at a specific idea and look at execution, because the client has already bought into that idea. This morning, I wake up with another brilliant idea. Being the CEO or the top level executive, what do? I move into the room and say, guys, please throw this idea out. I have a new idea. This is what we are going to do. What is likely to happen? You are continuously lighting fires and continuously creating newer and newer situations. You are actually taking decisions. Right or wrong, you are undoing the past and creating a new decision, because for you, something looks better, something looks new, something looks far bigger than what you are doing. You are a visionary. For you, that's all you can see. Look at the fourth kind of leader. Whatever I do, my people cannot be upset. So in case your governance or your government is like this, no, people will be unhappy. Let the shops be open. So what if breakdown happens? So what if pandemic moves to stage 3? People have to be happy here. They have to do what they have to do. If not every day, at least once in a week, open the showrooms, open the malls, whatever. Because my people cannot be unhappy. They have to be happy all the time. If I have a leader, in my experience of having done this profiling for more than about 30 to 40,000 people in the last 8 to 10 years, predominantly I have found that 80 to 85% of the leaders I have profiled at various levels have one of the 4 parameters as predominant decision-making parameter in their head. I have seen about 5 to 7% who have 2 parameters. They have a combination of D and G, they have a combination of C and S, they have a combination of G and C, whatever permutation combination you can make. All 4 cannot exist in a person. We call them as textbook CEOs. You can read about them in textbooks, or you will not find them in real life. So if you are claiming to make democratic decision making, let me go back to the definition which I gave you on democracy. Democracy is not about voting. Democracy is not finding out what is the majority view. Democracy is about ensuring that whatever needs to be done to take a balanced decision is done by me as a leader and made it to be enabled in my organization. For example, I'm a C-type leader. For example, I have a brilliant idea and I know for sure I don't know how to convert them into D or productivity or results. I don't know how to build SOPs, processes, quality norms, legalities, compliances around it, which is a G-style leadership. I do not know how to enthuse and motivate and morale boost my co-workers. I'm a visionary, I can think big, I can come with brilliant ideas. But if I only push forward with that, what am I likely to do? I will not have outputs coming. I will not have governance or compliance happening, which means I can be on the wrong side of the law. My customers can be unhappy with the quality of the service or product I offer. My own team members will be unhappy because I am continuously changing ideas and they are getting confused. If I'm a C leader, before I move into decision making, I know what my profile is. I know that I have to flank myself with D, G, and S, which means once I have a brilliant idea, I must have at least 3 people with each of these profile around me who can actually fill up the blanks for me. I may be a great architect, but I'm not a civil engineer. I need the help of a civil engineer for me to complete the building. Likewise, every executive at each of the rung of the ladder in a pyramid, if you imagine a pyramid, as I mentioned before, the top you have 1 or 2 people sitting, and if you split the pyramids, you'll find that at each of the level you can create blocks and blocks and blocks. That's how the original pyramid was built in, say, in Egypt. Each of the blocks will have leaders at each level. and each one of them will have multiple traits that they bring to the table. One of the 4 traits for sure they will have. If you're able to locate them, if you're able to pool these inputs together before you jump into a decision, you will have a democratic decision, not in terms of votes, but in terms of ensuring that an idea which is going to take me to the future, which is what my future decision is 1 year from now, 2 years from now, whether it's a new product, whether it's a top line that I'm talking about, whether it's about a vision that I have created. I flank myself with people who bring delivering. They will tell me how to convert my C into D. The G person will tell me how to convert the D and ensure that I put the SOPs and processes in place so that I don't compromise on quality and I comply with whatever I do. The S person brings whatever is needed to the table and tells me how to ensure that the team's harmony is kept in place while we push for numbers, while we push for compliance, while we push for a greater vision. All this comes down to about 4 to 5 parameters for each of the boxes. Have a standard decision making tool available as an Excel. I'll share it with Mr. Vijay at the end of it, which is a self-help
Mr. Prakash,
tool.
just sorry to interrupt. We're just about 6 minutes over. Shall we give it another couple of minutes? Are we close to the end?
We are almost there.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay, how many minutes do I have more before how much time do you have for Q&A after that?
Well, I have 3 quick questions. I have 3 questions from the audience. How much more time would you need for your slides? I think there's a couple of slides, right?
I had slides here. I can share the slide with them offline also later. They can read and take it. The key is to bring a team of building mutual trust and respect. And there is a definition for trust that you will see here, which they can read. If they have questions, I can take it later. There is a definition of respect, which I share here, which is what helps to build a team of trust and respect so that I'm able to get a balanced decision on the table. These are the 2 slides I had. Now I can move to questions.
Thanks, Mr. Prakash. I'll just read out the questions. There are 3 of them. First one is by Mr. Ramakrishnan. The question is actually decision making, improper or wrong data. I think he wants to understand if a decision is made based on improper or wrong data, what are the consequences? Can we revert or can we reverse?
Yeah, if you look at the plan, do, check, act loop, you can always reverse. It's always possible for us to go back to a decision, but you have to bear in mind that you already traveled a distance in the execution. For example, you have moved into a terrain in a warfare, and the initial data was flawed, and you were given a set of data which did not show you the map of the ground, which had certain landmines. You moved into that place, and the landmines start blowing on your face, and you lose few of your soldiers. Now you redraw your data and then find the exact data through intelligence to find that there are certain landmines on the way. Now you have to redraw your strategy to move in another way. So having improper or flawed or insufficient data many times can make us move through a specific way, but we have to come back and correct and then fill up the data that was missing so that we revisit the decision and move on. I hope I have answered the question to Mr. Ramakrishnan.
Yeah, yes, sir. Understood.
Thank you. Right, so I'm going to do the next question quickly. It's by Mr. Radhakrishnan. Logical decisions and intuition, are they not oxymorons?
Sorry, there is an overlap of voice.
Yeah, that is. Sorry. See if I can mute the person. Okay, let's go again. This is by Mr. V. Radhakrishnan. Logical decisions and intuition, are they not oxymorons?
Yeah, that's why actually, as they say, I mean, work from home is an oxymoron. So see, here is where I'll completely take it out of the box to give you something. What the brain doesn't know, the mind cannot comprehend. It's a very old saying that many of us may not really completely comprehend. When initially Westerners were actually going out on a worldwide occupation spree and they landed in Americas, in one of the islands that they went, they had an army which was much stronger than bigger than them. But it was an island, And when they actually went and landed, and these people had seen them only after they landed, here is the question to you. Why is it that these people did not see the ship coming? Because the people in the island had never seen a ship in their life before, because they never had to go into the sea at all. And apparently the sea, though it had the ship, was not seen by them because they had never seen a ship in their lives. And when the ship came, till the people actually came out of the ship onto the land, they know humans, so they were able to see. But by the time it was too late, because the brain never knew for them that a ship existed. Likewise, when you are speaking about logic, logic normally comes from a different portion of your organ, which is your brain, specifically the left brain. Whereas intuition comes from the heart. You might be interested in Googling and finding out this term called as heart math. Go ahead and do it. There are 3 interesting books you will find. They found out that surprisingly, the heart has its own brain inbuilt in its own strange and funny way, which is now scientifically proven. Which means the heart by itself can think and take decisions without the involvement of the brain. If you are able to think logically, park it, leave it out, silence your mind, and wait for the heart to work, the intuition completely works. If you have read the famous book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, how is it possible that women are able to intuitively feel and men are able to read the maps? Which means we are differently wired. Here, the idea is not to worry about 2 different wiring, but the idea is to create a fusion between 3 wires, which is the logical, intuitive, and emotional portion of our side, which is existing. All 3 exist. When the day is there, the night is not there. When the night is there, the day is not there. Yet we go through both. Which is right, which is wrong. Likewise, it's possible for you to fuse logic, intuition, and emotion, but you have to allow the time and space for it to happen. I hope I have answered the question of Mr. Radhakrishnan.
Thank you, Prakash.
Thank you, Prakash. Okay, I'll take one quick question. This is from Vaidishwar. The development of critical thinking is considered a good framework for decision making. Would you please give an example of the use of critical thinking?
Say, critical thinking in some way can be taken as a subset of logical thinking, critical thinking, analytical ability, whatever. But in all this, what we are using is only one portion of our, you see, today one thing which is gaining worldwide acceptance is known as whole brain decision making. That's one model I did not get into. When you look at the brain's part, there is a right side, there is a left side, and the left side is what controls your logical thinking. The right side is what controls your creative side. And there is something called as a midbrain, which is developing worldwide as a new way of looking at things. Midbrain seems to have neurolocators or neurons which are inside, which can be programmed in their own way for you to tap into areas which have been hitherto unknown to man. If you really look at only critical thinking, your ability, critical thinking one way is also to find what is right, what is wrong with a given situation. Logical thinking is a superset of that. When you fuse that along with the right brain thinking, where you bring a little bit of creativity in, and then move into the bottom portion of the brain where your amygdala is stationed, which is what also is called the emotional portion of the thinking, or emotional brain, which is where emotions come from. And then move on a little bit and move into your heart, which has its own brain from where the intuition comes up. Then I've actually fused my brain, my emotions, and my heart. Actually, I create a beautiful equilateral triangle between all 3. And when they work in fusion, you find decisions which you have never seen in your life before. Since it's a short time, I'm not jumping too much into it, Mr. Vijay. I hope I've sufficiently covered that question.
Okay, a couple of quick ones. These are last minute entries. One from Vasi. Is it good to use emotion in decision making? I think this was covered in your lie approach.
Maybe they can see the recording later. It will be fully answered.
Yeah, I'll share the recording with everybody.
Yeah.
One from Shanta Kumar. What model of decision making would you suggest or recommend for project managers for effectiveness? This is a whole session altogether, I think.
No, let me just give a brief answer. The most preferred model of decision making for me is the DGC's model that I shared. In that, you will find that there are a lot of subsets. The DGCS is a workshop which runs for actually 3 days. Each of the model, we dive deeper and give them tools and techniques, and you'll find that project management actually is a subset of DGCS model in some way. You'll find that you tick all the boxes. When I share a simple Excel after this exercise is over, I'll send it to you so that you can share with the members. If they're able to answer each of the question, which they'll find it difficult because they'll be approaching each of the question from their current perspective of looking at decision-making model, they will find that a PMP professional and a DGCS model will make a great marriage and a lifelong happy life. Next question.
Sure. I think that's it in the interest of time, and just because we've overrun a little, I would like to thank you for this wonderful session. It has been absolutely informative, and audience have had fun interacting. So thanks on behalf of the PMI Chennai chapter to you, Mr. Prakash. Really appreciate it. I'm just going to quickly share an e-memento, which I will email you. If I can just get hold of the screen. Sorry, bear with me. And yeah, and thanks everyone for the feedback that you've already filled out. Do appreciate if we can all, those who have not done the feedback, please complete before the end of this session.
Can they turn on the video? I can see their faces quickly before I sign off. Some of the lovely faces I would not possible.
Right, here we go. So this is our memento. Maybe I'll just unmute everybody so we can maybe applaud. So, you know, as a gesture and to appreciate. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's very fantastic course. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash. Thank you for giving a very good thing. Really, a lot of insight, a lot of no emotional thing.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for attending. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
And enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye.
Thanks a lot.